Hello everybody, welcome back to the garden. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, getting outside, doing all sorts of gardening projects here in the spring. Hopefully you're getting out more than I've been able to lately because we've had 3 days straight of nothing but rain and the forecast looks kind of dreary from here on out up until this coming weekend. So fingers crossed that we get some nicer weather so we're able to complete all the outdoor projects because as you guys know, there is a ton of stuff to do in the spring. So in today's video, I wanted to talk to you all about willow tree cuttings and then the size of cuttings that you should be taking to have the best results. If you guys aren't familiar with my fascination, I should say, of willow tree cuttings and willow trees, it kind of started back when my mom we got a willow tree planted for her for Mother's Day. And this willow tree has grown from a 8-foot seedling or sapling to now a tree that's probably over 25 feet, almost 30 feet. In just a matter of years, it's been, I think, about 7 years, 8 years since we planted that tree. And it has been incredible to see the growth that that thing has made. And that was the very first tree that I ever took willow tree cuttings from. I had just started up my YouTube channel. I was all excited about many different sorts of projects, specifically propagating, cloning, taking cuttings of different plants and what kind of plants you can take cuttings of. And it turned out that weeping willow trees or willow trees of all sorts are very, very easily rooted, and you can have very high success rates with all sorts of cuttings. And in today's video, I'm going to prove to you guys that you can have those high success rates with a wide variance of cuttings. I have some examples of the cuttings that we normally take of willow trees. So in these pots right here and here, this is what I would say is the typical diameter of the cutting that we take when propagating willow trees. Usually if you go online or look up different videos and look up my videos, we always recommend a diameter of about 1/4 inch, or if you could imagine the size of a pencil. So cuttings of that size are what's always told to you guys to take because you are going to have a near 100% success rate. But this last year, when we did a heavy pruning on our willow tree in the backyard that I propagated 3 years ago, and now it grows to about 10 feet every year, and then I take cuttings from it, chopping it down to 6 feet. That willow tree this year, when we pruned it up, I took some really, really large cuttings to see what would happen. I figured that they would grow, but I wasn't really sure on if they would or not. So these are those cuttings. This is almost an inch in diameter, and this thing is growing like crazy. It's got shoots coming up all over the place. When I do grow these, what I normally do is I'll just pinch off the bottom growth. So then we can slowly establish a main leader coming off of this cutting. But if you just look at that, roots like no other. Real thick, dark colored roots too. These are very healthy and strong roots. And the same thing with this cutting too. We've got one little root popping up right there. And we have green shoots. We have branches establishing here, 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 all the way up the entire cutting. And these things are just huge, much bigger than what is normally recommended. But I think that just because of the size that these are, that they might get quite a bit of a head start as long as I'm careful not to introduce any sort of disease in these cuttings. I'm changing out the water frequently, and I am keeping close observation of these cuttings when I transplant them into the buckets. I think they're going to do outstandingly well, just from the growth that I'm seeing so far. They did take a little bit longer to root than I normally would expect with cuttings that are about the size of a pencil. these were several weeks until they shot out the roots. And that's because it's, if you think of all that material in there, they've probably got more to work through. Or maybe it took a little bit to soak up water in that whole cutting up to the point where roots were kind of hoaxed into growing out of that willow tree cutting. So there I've kind of proved to myself and to you guys that you can grow willow tree cuttings of all sorts of shapes and sizes. And if I'm correct, I believe that we could even take cuttings that are much longer than the usual 6 to 8 inches that willow tree cuttings typically have. The reason why I think they usually are shorter is just for shipping purposes, and for those who actually sell them, it's easier to distribute shorter cuttings compared to if you were shipping cuttings that were like 2 or 3 feet long. But I don't think that's actually determining whether or not that cutting is going to root. I think no matter what, that cutting is going to root. So in a experiment that I'm going to be starting as soon as we get more growth on this willow tree that I can get some cuttings, I'm probably going to take some even larger cuttings than this. I'm going to go like 2 inches, so double this size, and see if I can get that to root. I'm also going to take longer branches, 2 to 3 feet in length, and see if I can grow those and propagate those too. From my very, very basic standpoint of plant knowledge, I don't see why the length is going to affect it very much. Maybe because it's trying to draw so much more energy that the plant is not able to sustain, and that might be a factor in that. But as far as the width, the reason why larger cuttings are not going to be able to root, I don't know how big we're going to be able to get. I'm going to try 2 inches next and see how that does. But the reason why that might not root and grow is because by the time that plant is alive and growing roots, and it's transferring all the nutrients through it, if it's too big of a cutting, I just don't think it's going to be able to fight off or keep diseases from growing within that cutting. That's probably the biggest issue when we're talking about the diameter. But as far as length, I think we're in the clear for that. While I do really hope that you guys get into willow trees of all kinds, I do have to leave you with this. Make sure that you don't plant weeping willow trees right next to your house or even by some sewer lines, because the root development of this tree, weeping willow trees especially, can be very, very aggressive, can cause damage to foundations, and can seek out moisture in sewer lines if they are right by them. So make sure, just like everything else in the garden, that you have your due diligence in planning, and that you really think about where you're going to be growing these trees. Unless you plan on keeping one really, really small like I have in my backyard. I just trim off all the new growth every year, and I'm kind of creating like a weeping willow bonsai out of it. Unless you're doing something like that, really be cautious on where you grow them, because I don't want you guys damaging your house or anything like that, because weeping willow trees do grow fast. They do grow very big. While they are extremely beautiful trees, I absolutely love them. You do have to be careful where you plant them. So thank you guys all so much for watching today. I hope you found this video entertaining and possibly even learned a little bit. Happy gardening, and we'll see you in the next episode.